Our first speaker today is Nate Miller. He's the founder of Proving Ground, a consultancy which takes on some of the most complex problems in architecture today. Previously, he was at Case Consultancy in New York. Today, Nate's going to be talking about data-driven design, which is one of his favorite topics, and he believes that architectural practices can change their businesses and improve their businesses by understanding and harnessing the data that they create through their design processes.
First of all, thank you to AEC Magazine and Martin Day for inviting me to talk to you all today as part of this virtual event. Don't let my green screen backdrop fool you. I'm huddled in a small, cramped home office like I'm sure many of you are. Now, the initial subject I was asked to talk to you about was related to the future of design tools. These days, it's kind of hard to think about what the future will hold. Like many of your companies, my small digital design agency, Proving Ground, has been navigating the ebbs and flows of today's world of a global pandemic, social unrest, and natural calamity. I can't help but feel that the discourse of digital design tools is experiencing a kind of dissonance with this reality, when the more prosaic struggles of leveraging even the most basic of tools to realize a great built environment continues to persist. Among other things, it occurs to me that the global pandemic has driven businesses to finally and seriously consider their digital transformation strategy, possibly for the first time. As designers moved into their home offices, this crisis has also put more onus on professionals of all types to be more self-sufficient with their technology. As such, the relative ease and difficulty of our digital processes with our tools has come to the forefront in ways that may have been taken for granted before. Even today in 2020, computers are not exactly easy. I'm still often helping my parents figure out some manner of why won't this print, and can you help me open this file? Extrapolate that out to the context of AEC companies moving their staff to home offices combined with some of the most complicated building design software out there, and you can imagine what our IT and DT departments are juggling with in their own businesses. Speaking of AEC tools, it occurs to me that it has been over 18 years since Autodesk acquired Revit Technology Corporation. The promises of BIM to transform building design and construction over these years have been numerous. Among these promises have included the integration of disciplines resulting in fewer coordination issues on site, the use of data-rich objects expediting quantity reporting and takeoffs, and the reliance of 3D objects making 2D documentation theoretically obsolete. Moreover, the informational aspect of BIM showed promise and the opportunity to leverage data for informed feedback loops in design. And yet, a visit to digital design conferences and executive meetings in leading design companies today revealed continued discussions about bridging skills gaps, dealing with low levels of standardization, managing poor data quality, and navigating labyrinthine project workflows to move information among team members. Meanwhile, the 2D document product continues to rule the day as the primary means of assigning professional liability and coordinating architecture. Now, this shouldn't imply that the problems of realizing the potential for data-rich transformative workflows is associated with bad software, although there is much to critique about the AEC industry's core platforms. Instead, I will posit that we exist in a space full of wicked problems that technology alone is unable to solve, and that perhaps the future of design and the tools we use to perform design has less to do with fanciful algorithms with the ability to produce a deluge of information. Perhaps it has less to do with the novel implementation of artificial intelligence that approximate, at best, caricatures of design processes. And perhaps it even has less to do with how much computational power we can put into the cloud, and that allows some to collect the bounty of recurring revenue. Maybe when we go into the core problems that affect the quality of design, those prevalent in conversations at conferences and business meetings, the answer comes from revisiting fundamentals. In the last 5 years of establishing Proving Ground as a consulting practice, I have been fortunate enough to work with and among a wide array of clients. These organizations span leaders in design, engineering, construction, and facility owners. In my estimation, the famous quote by William Gibson holds true. The future is already here, it's just not evenly distributed. Firms are floating in a sea of all manner of technology and data, but are also failing to swim due to numerous skills gaps that fail to get bridged due to relentless project cycles and being swamped with all manner of other responsibilities for delivering some of the most complex assemblies out there: buildings. We see the championing of learning to code among professionals that struggle with basic computational concepts, or let's make a dashboard for managers who may lack basic data management capabilities in Excel, or a call to be data-driven when architecture, education, and practice lack emphasis in practical analytical concepts, to say nothing of little or no direct experiences with database fundamentals. But we have seen success. When digital strategies move beyond a fetishization of height-driven advanced topics and instead look at how to equip designers and managers with skills that address core problems. When tools are positioned to lower the barrier to entry for complex processes, and when there's a recognition among leaders that the reasoning of, because this is the way we've always done it, is not a valued argument to support wasteful, time-consuming processes. Let's look at some examples. There can be little doubt that digital workflows today are full of friction. Data gets stuck in silos of various authoring platforms, models have to be rebuilt, and data needs to be manually re-entered. However, workflow design has come into fashion with some leading practices looking to streamline wasteful processes, and CAD vendors such as McNeil have placed emphasis on new modes of compatibility in their design tools. Yet many of these solutions often fail to scale to a broad user base. Computational design knowledge, represented by Grasshopper and Dynamo, is still not commonplace among a broad base of users, even after over 12 years since Grasshopper hit the scene. As such, many larger practices retain software developers and computational specialists just to get the tools to interoperate. As consultants, we have acted as those specialists for many projects, including the Hangzhou Stadium by MBBJ, the Lucas Museum of Narrative Art by MAD with Stantec, and the American Museum of Natural History Gilder Center by Studio Gang. 10 years ago, I published a peer-reviewed research paper on workflow friction present in projects like the MBBJ Stadium and highlighted the spaghetti of disintegrated processes, file formats, and information barriers. Over the years, in building up a core set of tools through various project engagements, we have recently published Conveyor, a commercial plugin that aims to provide a general purpose set of translation workflows for any skill level in a common problem space. How can I translate my data and geometry from Rhino to Revit? I believe that if a user knows how to perform standard modeling operations in tools like Rhino or Revit, then moving geometry between them shouldn't require computational design knowledge, coding chops, or advanced data management skills. Conveyor leverages the fact that McNeil has created an open file format with open NURBS, and it has been available for years. This enables Conveyor to read geometric data right out of the file so we can reconstruct the data using ready-made automated processes and a conventional user interface. Floors are remade direct from Rhino surfaces, Rhino blocks are constructed as Revit families, and complex meshes can be represented as clean geometry for documentation. There are many solutions out there in the wild for this, but in combination with an emphasis on situating the technology for broader usability among designers, we can observe these workflows having a wider impact. However, that does not let software vendors off the hook. As consumers of technology, we need to continue to hold our software providers accountable by demanding open workflows and more pathways for data compatibility so that we can continue to build integrations that work for everyone. And data integration is central here. The future of design points us to AI as a concept that can help support design decision-making based on data. Yet it is evident that even the most basic of data integration in early design tools is lacking. A walkthrough of mainstream design practices still shows planners and designers performing manual area takeoffs on surfaces, aggregating the data in Excel, or even tabulating totals with a calculator. That seems odd in the wake of sophisticated building information modeling frameworks. Recently, we released a new plugin for Rhino called Semantic. The premise is simple. We wanted a utility for flexibly integrating data with conceptual Rhino geometry and a system for automatic reporting of those attributes as the design progressed. That sounds super basic, but it is still a barrier for many. Semantic exposes a new UI allowing for data property management and a live report feature. As designers scale, trim, add, and subtract geometry, the tool reports on the status of the design properties. We have taken the workflow further by allowing users to export their properties to common data formats and read the Rhino model directly into business intelligence software that is growing in popularity. Power BI, a Microsoft dashboarding and reporting tool, is finding its way onto the desktops of many building professionals. It allows users to combine data sources and create interactive dashboards with charts, tables, and publish them to the web for sharing. All of this is possible without the need for coding or web development know-how. With Semantic, we latched onto this workflow and created a way for designers to view their Rhino designs in an interactive dashboard, combine it with other data, and create data-rich presentations in a matter of minutes and without the need to write a single line of code. This does not get the designer off the hook for needing to understand data presentation and analytical fundamentals, a central tenet for any successful implementation. However, the goal here is to lower that barrier to entry for data-driven technology and equip a broader group of users to engage in ways they have not been able to previously. As designers get more comfortable with data, there are a few inevitable questions I often get about the workflow. What about all the data we have created in the past? Can we analyze it? Can we leverage it? Can we use it to improve our processes and design? Indeed, if BIM has enabled anything, it is the opportunity to leverage common data structures for building geometry and data relationships. A Revit file is a database, as are other non-proprietary formats such as IFC. Of course, while the data quality of these files is sometimes questionable, the common data structures of BIM provide an opportunity to understand our data and determine different courses of action. Tracer, our Revit data analysis toolkit, provides a mechanism for harvesting Revit data into a standalone relational database. In combination with Power BI, we can visualize the underlying data of any Revit model and even produce automatic and dynamic architectural diagrams directly from Revit elements. Using this data, a team can build up all sorts of analytical reports that can help set courses of action. A course of action may even come in the form of a quality analysis of the data itself and help teams establish quality control procedures for auditing and evaluating the building information model. Actions may also result in the form of orchestrating a dashboard that uses BIM with owner-facing metrics for space utilization and other concepts that can impact the design of a facility. The examples I have described here today are not exactly out there or radical. I didn't touch on generative frameworks that are so popular in today's marketing presentations. I didn't discuss our research with machine learning or the Internet of Things, and all of these ideas are certainly important. Instead, I wanted to address more prosaic concerns in design with an aim at bridging skills gaps so often present in design and construction practice. There can be little doubt that there is a clear need to push data-driven design. Construction waste is projected to double globally by 2025. Buildings are a leading contributor to greenhouse gas emissions, and growing populations are requiring us to think about how we are building our cities to meet demand. We need evidence-based workflows, processes, and tools to become commonplace in our businesses, and we need to mobilize our people to take advantage of them. This, in my view, is the future of design tools and the path forward for a data-driven agenda for architecture.
Our next presenters are Hilmar Gunderson and Johann Hanograph. Hilmar is the founder and CEO of ArcIO, a startup creating a unique collaborative VR and AR design tool for architects. Johann is the director of product. Together, Hilmar and Johann join us at NXTBLD for the second year running to update us all on ArcIO's rapid progress in the past 12 months since its worldwide preview here at NXTBLD in 2019.
Hello everyone, my name is Hilmar and I'm the founder and CEO of ArcIO, and with me today is Johann, our VP of Product.
Hi everyone.
Last year we showed ArcIO for the very first time live on stage at NXTBLD in London. And I have to say it's great to be back, even though we're meeting virtually this time. Now at ArcIO, our mission is to simplify the architectural design process, to make it more effective and collaborative than possible with today's flat screen design tools. We basically want to give designers superpowers.
Last year we made a lot of improvements to the ArcIO beta. One of the areas we've been focusing on is integrating Archeo seamlessly into the design process. For the first time, it's now possible to load a Revit model into a shared virtual space and explore new design options together, then export these results back to native Revit families. We also focused on making Archeo available to anyone, no matter what device you are using, so anyone can join a design session, make new design suggestions, whether using a VR headset, desktop PC, tablet, or even a phone.
The COVID-19 crisis has highlighted the need for better collaborative design tools, as design firms have been trying to stay productive while working remotely. Later in this presentation, we'll be doing a virtual interview with Ernesto Pacheco from Canon Design in the US. Ernesto is one of our earliest beta testers, and he's going to share with us how Canon Design has been using Archeo to successfully collaborate and interact with clients while working remotely. But first, let's see how Archeo works. Johann, are you ready?
Yes, let's get started. Hi, welcome to Archeo everyone. Let's start by talking a little bit about why we are making Archeo. The creative process in architecture is traditionally done using sketches and simple foam models. Nowadays, most of our design work is done in 3D, but we still use 2D screens for creating these models. We now have technologies to experience our design in 3D using virtual and augmented reality. But when we want to try out something new, we need to go back to our 2D devices. With Archeo, we want to reimagine what the architectural design process can be like when we're not bound by 2D devices, where you can use your hands to model in 3D, just like working with physical models that can be picked up, slid, and glued together. We see Archeo as a 3D tracing paper, where you can quickly prototype ideas together on existing 2D or 3D content like Rhino, SketchUp, and Revit models. Since last year, we worked on a close integration with Autodesk Revit, making it easier to load your latest designs and draw new suggestions on top of this using volumes or sketches. These changes will then be exported back to native Revit geometry so you can continue your work in Revit. But the fun part is that this can be done fully collaborative, so I can invite others to join me and explore ideas from any scale. Hi Katrin, could you please make that tower a bit wider? I can also work on the same object from human scale. Let's move that tower a bit to the back like this. Context is important when exploring your designs. In Archeo, you can load your site with the built-in map feature and automatically generate 3D buildings from OpenStreetMap's data. Let's move on to the plot next door and show how Archeo works. Creating shapes is simple. I just pull them out of the ground in one gesture. To create solid shapes, I pull up. To create voids, I push down into the underlying shape. As I work, you can see how shapes snap to the edges. Now the best part is this can all be done fully collaborative, so Hilmar can make edits on the building on the same time.
Sure, let me adjust just a few things over here.
As I pick up shapes, they also align with other shapes, making working with Archeo even easier than physical model making.
Okay, I'll adjust the height of the building a bit. Why don't you bring in a real Revit model now, Johann?
Sure, let's get to Revit. In Revit, we can easily export a 3D scene to Archeo using our Revit plugin. This allows us to select the level of detail to reduce the amount of polygons for working with models on mobile devices like the Oculus Quest or phones and tablets. Once the model has been successfully exported, you can bring it into Archeo. We also support importing of images, program requirements, and other 3D models. Okay, let's get rid of this building and bring in the Revit model. Here you can see the model available in my library that will be placed on the table using the Revit North coordinates. Once we have imported the Revit model, we can sketch on top of it and explore some new design options.
How about trying to add an extension to the building, maybe over here?
Sure, let me work on that.
It's possible to work in any scale in Archeo, When you want to do more detailed work, you just scale down to a more comfortable size.
Why don't we add some color to the entrance? And maybe skew it a bit to make it more interesting.
Okay, let's go inside.
I think we should add a door here. Let me sketch the opening so we don't forget to add one once everything is loaded back to Revit. You want to create a wall here to separate the lobby from the restaurant. Hilmar, can you maybe get started with the reception desk?
Sure, how about this size?
Okay, let me move it a bit. How about we add a logo on the wall here? And maybe some chairs over here.
Let's move them to the side so they're not in the way.
We are now back outside again, where I can experience the design at human scale while Hilmar creates a new tower. I can also move things around by simply pointing at them.
One of the main features of Archeo is that you can join a design meeting even if you don't have a VR headset, as Archeo also works on desktop PCs, phones and tablets. Here you can see how a user with an iPad can see everything that's going on inside the meeting as you sculpt the new tower a little bit. Another key feature is that you can add program tags to individual floors and immediately see total area sizes and how close you are to meeting your program requirements. You can also see this updating on the iPad as the tower is being worked on, and even added program tags on the iPad as well.
On the iPad, I can easily navigate around the model and communicate design suggestions with the users inside VR by sketching on the model itself. Note how the area tool changes as Hilmar edits the tower in VR. Design options are another powerful feature of Archeo. Simply make a duplicate of the model, try out some other ideas, and toggle back when you're done. It is even possible to create entire towers, move and rotate them around from a non-VR device. And by placing the model on a table in AR using a phone or tablet, you can see everyone working in the scene and even sketch or model something in AR. Let's jump to human scale inside the building and check out the view. How about we create a new meeting space here? Creating spaces while experiencing them from human scale is really powerful, and these validated spatial objects can be used again once loaded back as native Revit geometry. And of course, we can play with the time of day to get a feel for how the light will flow into that new meeting space. Once you're happy with your design, we can export the design options to 3D or native Autodesk Revit. Once in Revit, we can use the Archeo plugin to import that scene to generic models or mesh families that can be used as a base for facades. You can choose what materials from Archeo to import, and if you want to delete the previous import when loading new proposals. Everything created or loaded in Archeo will be converted to Revit objects aligned with the original model. The volumes in Archeo get converted to native geometry, and Archeo props like trees, people and furniture get created as native Revit families. Also, the iPad sketches get loaded and the program data and materials are contained in the geometry. Here we can see the new entrance that can directly be used as a design reference, including a reception and sketch for the missing door. Even custom imported 3D objects, like this chair, will be converted to native Revit families, so they can easily be updated or replaced by other families in your library. Welcome back to Archeo. Joining us today is Ernesto Pachenko from Canon Design. Ernesto is one of our early beta users, and we're going to have a small chat.
So Ernesto, great to have you here with us inside Archeo.
Thanks, Hilmar. This is amazing. This is my first virtual interview, so thanks for the invite.
No problem. So can you start by maybe telling us a little bit about Canon Design and your work?
Sure. So Canon Design is a global design company. We are architects, engineers, and industry strategists. We have over 20 offices across the nation, one in Canada and one in India and Mumbai. We're about 1,000 employees. So yeah, we get to do a lot of cool work around the country and the world.
Excellent. So tell me, I'm curious, when did you first get started with using VR for architecture?
Sure. So my first try was probably 4 years ago. We were exploring, how we can implement tools for mock-ups, right? So we do a lot of patient room mock-ups, and we were trying to find a way to cut the cost on the creation of these mock-ups by introducing some virtual tools. So we looked into Unity 3D and Unreal Engine, started like testing some things to see if, our coworkers could use this on the field. And we found some really cool, interesting ideas out of that. That was our first actually try on VR, and then from there it just exploded. We started having other projects coming with ideas on how we can implement walkthroughs and interactive voiceover I guess explorations of campuses and things like that. So it's been great.
So tell me, this year has obviously been very unusual for everybody. Can you talk about how the COVID-19 crisis has kind of impacted the work you do at Canon Design?
Sure. Yeah. So, it is funny. Right before quarantine started in the U.S., we were tasked with a very important interview for a project pursuit. And one of the things that we right away started looking into is how do we communicate with our client virtually? We usually, 3D print, objects or, put together physical models that we bring to the interview with the client. So this time around, we were kind of scrambling, trying to find a way to implement something like that virtually. And we have been using Archeo for the last 2 years. So we had a good idea of how to put together these type of presentations, but we have never attempted to do anything like this with a client, especially not through, Zoom or GoToMeeting. So one of the things that we have seen with COVID is the need for this type of tools, a way to, virtually interact with the client, and, try to spark their imagination when it comes to their project and the ideas that we bring to the table. So we have been lucky enough that we were kind of ready. We had been prepping for this. The transition was smooth for the most part. We didn't have any major issues with technology. We use virtual desktops anyway, so we connect from different states to different offices with ease. So it has been kind of like a natural way to walk into virtual presentations with Canon.
Excellent. And you brought some examples with you that we can take a look at, right?
Sure. One of the things that we find very interesting with Archeo is that physicality, I guess, of interacting with, the pieces that you bring into the VR space. It feels more like you're actually working with a physical model and 3D printed pieces. You can actually remove things, plan for, having sections to be revealed. And it's very, very fun and exciting for the client to see this. It has been eye-opening for most of them. So Arcade has definitely been that wow factor that we have been looking for, especially now during COVID times. How do you make it fun for the client to enjoy something that is totally I guess, away from how we used to work with them. So it's definitely, sparking their imagination and, making sure that they understand the process a little bit more. They have questions about, the 3D models now. So it's creating this new bridge between the client and, the work that we do. On this other slide, So this is a really cool slide, I think. We use RQ for the first time 2 years on a client presentation. We actually did it on site. We brought a laptop and a headset to work with, and this was the actual first time we 3D model in VR in front of a client. And on this other slide, we can see this is just a screenshot of a virtual presentation. We actually won this project. We have, kind of designers from, Chicago and New York City and other offices just joining in. And we actually use RQ in this presentation. We had a designer using a tablet. He was sketching and talking about the design while orbiting inside the virtual space, and I was right there, with a VR headset, helping him navigate and move things in the virtual space. So if you want, we can actually jump into this presentation quickly, and you can see how it feels. All right, so here we are. This is the Metro Health project. We won this project during quarantine, which was very exciting. We decided to actually create a fun activity within this session. We were toying with the idea of creating, some type of, model A and model B and switch between them. But then we decided it would be fun to just uh, have a section that you could remove during the presentation. And this section, was important just because, it was displaying the connection between the existing building and the new proposed tower, and also the connection between the new green spaces that we were proposing back to the existing green spaces, and how that will affect, employees and also patients going from one tower to the other. So yeah, I mean, RKO is definitely helping to democratize this type of opportunities, is allowing kind of designers to utilize, whatever tool they want to use to 3D model, and then just easily bring in those models into a VR space that is more conceptual, is more clean. It goes down to, talking about design, and it doesn't really get in the way of presenting our ideas or the design intent that we want to get across to our clients.
Well, the future is definitely very interesting, and I just have to say that we're glad to be on this journey together with you. And
Most definitely, yeah.
yeah, it's been awesome to have you here, and thanks for dropping by, and hopefully we'll see you back again soon.
For sure. Thank you so much.
So that brings us to the end of the presentation. As you can see, virtual reality offers many unique advantages when it comes to working together, not only remotely, but also when in the same location. The sense of presence, of being together in a model with other people, and being able to intuitively understand design options is something you simply don't get with today's flat screen design tools.
You can also use RKO to brainstorm design ideas together, either from scratch or by working on top of existing models from design tools like Revit or Rhino. You can work on urban scale for messing, or try out a new idea for a lobby using a VR headset or your phone.
We'd like to thank Ernesto for joining us for this presentation, and the NXTBLD team for inviting us to speak again. As we said last year, we're just getting started. Immersive technologies like virtual and augmented reality are advancing rapidly. Soon you'll even be able to model inside RQ with your bare hands, no controllers needed. And there's lots more to come, so stay tuned. We'd love to get your feedback on the RQ beta, so please sign up at rko.is and let us know what you think. Thanks!
Thanks!
Our final speaker today is Julie Dorsey. Julie's the founder and chief scientist of Mental Canvas, a new startup with a really exciting 3D sketch tool. She's also the Frederick W. Benicki Professor of Computer Science at Yale University. In her talk on the future of drawing, she's going to be looking at this new technology that they've developed to create 2D sketches that are 3D models. It'll blow you away. It's really amazing.
Hello, I'm Julie Dorsey, the founder and chief scientist of Mental Canvas, a software technology company that is reimagining drawing for the digital age. Before I get started, I'd like to thank Martin Day, AEC Magazine, and the other organizers and sponsors of NXTBLD for the opportunity to speak to you today. This is what a drawing looks like today. It's my contention that drawing is going to change. I'm going to show you what drawing will be in the future. From Leonardo's anatomic sketches to Frank Gehry's conceptual drawings to movie storyboards, drawing is basic to exploring new ideas, communicating new concepts, creating new knowledge, and designing new products. But unlike text, photography, and music, which have been fundamentally transformed by the computer, drawing today on a computer isn't very different than drawing on paper was during the Renaissance. Mental Canvas is a technology that takes drawing to a place it's never been. Our vision is to enhance visual communication via computers by fundamentally elevating the way people draw. This is a single drawing created by a single person. You may recognize the building. It's Grand Central's terminal in New York City. That you see this as an animation is due to our new technology. The new animation is an integral part of the drawing. This drawing tells you much more about Grand Central than a traditional drawing ever could, but with only a modest amount of additional effort. Drawing isn't just for artists and designers. Anyone can make a compelling drawing or doodle with Mental Canvas. Here's an example using our authoring package by putting together some basic refrigerator art. So here we have a simple two-dimensional drawing, a house, a pathway, and a tree. And we can select some strokes on the pathway and reproject them, and then grab the tree and reproject it. And interestingly, the drawing looks exactly the same from the position from what we drew it, the view from which we drew it, but you can see now that it's been extended into 3D. Here's a more elaborate scene authored in the system. Here, the artist is drawing on a single canvas. This is a cave on a mountain. The system is organized with a set of canvas drawings, which you see along the left. Right now, we have a single canvas that's being updated as she draws. We think canvases are transparent sheets. They're like sheets of acetate placed in space. And here we're using our hinge tool to select a feature in the original drawing. And we've now added a second canvas or second transparent canvas, which you can see in the upper left. This is, of course, positioned at an angle to the first canvas. And now we're drawing on that canvas. Now the bridge is going to meet a third canvas in the foreground. So here we're now adding a new canvas that's parallel to the first canvas. And you notice that all the drawing in Mental Canvas is done in a frontoplanar way, meaning it's like almost like having a window in front of you that you're moving around in the scene and drawing on. Okay, now we're going to add some trees, a little bit of landscape in the foreground. Okay, so now we have 3 canvases. You can see up above that we have 2 modes, drawing and now view mode. Okay, so I'm going to show you something here that's a little bit different. We're now adding some strokes for some water. And you'll see in a moment that those strokes are actually on the back canvas. Obviously, we'd like them to connect to the canvas in the front foreground. And so we can use the hinge again to take those strokes, select them, and then reproject them such that they connect to the mountain in the foreground or the canvas in the foreground. And you can see that they do that. So that's a very nice feature in that you can draw on the system without having to worry about where your strokes will end up in the end. You can draw freely and put strokes on any canvas and then reproject them later. You can also notice that, as I mentioned in the previous example, those strokes look exactly the same in the view from which they were drawn, but they've, of course, been reinterpreted spatially. You can also draw in situ, as we see here. And one also thing, you can also have layers associated. So canvases are spatial constructs, and any canvas can have a layer stack. So here we're actually using some opacity paint to hide some of the hidden lines behind. Along the bottom, we have what we call bookmarks, which are key views of the scene. And here we're now in view mode and we're selecting a set of key views. And from those views, we can generate an animation, and we can output that animation as a video at a variety of different formats or resolutions. Okay, so that's the basic authoring system. I want to also show that we can, in addition to working with strokes, we can also work with photographs or images. So here we have a single photograph, and we've saved a key view and a bookmark below. That canvas is sitting on a single, the image is sitting on a single canvas. And now the artist is going in and selecting a part of this photograph, namely the right side of the building. And then once again, we can bring up our hinge tool, and similar to what I just showed you with strokes, we can actually reproject raster data or build a portion of this building photograph in this case. And again, we can continue in the same vein and select this guardrail out front. In addition, I should say, to manipulating the photo itself, we can also bring photos in as references. You can draw on top of a photo and then throw it away. And here we're now going to project, again, that guardrail, bring it, angle it toward us, and note again that it looks exactly the same from our original view. So here we're going to select these guys in the foreground. And now more of the ground plane. And just like you saw with the initial house sketch, we can now connect that ground plane to the guardrail. And now we're pulling these guys forward. Again, they look the same from the original as they did in the original photograph. And now we can go in and draw in situ. We can add some characters to the scene. And of note, you could actually put characters behind some of these elements that we projected. So you could have them partially occluded. So it's not just like editing a photograph. And here we've just introduced a new canvas that's behind some elements, and then you can go in and draw. And again, with a series of bookmarks, we can now create a simple animatic. Here we're adding and deleting bookmarks and adjusting timing between them. So this is a really nice set of features for putting together a design proposal or working out some ideas. You can very quickly take a single photo, manipulate it, add some content to it, and then create a little animation that can be shared with customers or collaborators. So now I'd like to show a short video which describes what some of our early customers have to say about Mental Canvas.
With Mental Canvas, I can actually get inside my drawing.
It's really magical. It's the same way that you use drawing on paper, but it goes 360 degrees. You can draw anywhere.
It's a game-changing tool, especially for what we do at Disney. I can basically now start to design rides with this. In order for us to do that same amount of work, we would have to hire a whole bunch of programmers, a whole bunch of visual artists. But Mental Canvas allows a single person to be that sole designer and create that whole vision very quickly.
The cool thing is that it's really easy to use and will make creating layout for animation in my field a lot easier.
Everybody says, whoa, when they see it. I mean, most clients can't read plans and they can't read sections. They can't read flat drawings. They need to see a perspective. Mental Canvas is all about the joy of drawing and expressing an idea. I just love it, and I can't imagine designing without it.
The output of Mental Canvas is a rich new graphical media type, which we call a spatial drawing, which can be shared, of course, through video, but also through a web-enabled player, which can run on any website, in an article, in a proposal, or so on. This kind of content is very well suited to today's multi-touch digital devices. Those are like the perfect means of consuming and interacting with this kind of content. And it's also great because non-designers can consume and interact with these spatial drawings with no training whatsoever. As long as they have a device, it basically runs very seamlessly. There's a large market for this kind of content in beyond architecture and engineering construction. There also is a market for this in ebooks and visual novels, educational materials, advertising, comics, multimedia, digital art, news, sports, and games. Now I want to share several different examples of the kind of content that can be generated with Mental Canvas. The New York Times has used Mental Canvas for a number of different stories. Here is an article for the US Open written by the architectural critic Michael Kimmelman and drawn by a Times artist. And here you can see the tennis center and then a number of the different venues, all drawn and explored with Mental Canvas. And again, the content is very immersive and allows you to see spaces in a new way. Here you see the main Arthur Ashe Arena, along with some of the smaller venues. The Times has also used Mental Canvas for World Cup coverage, Super Bowl coverage. Here from the World Cup, by using a single photograph of two of the most interesting goals, the Times took apart two key plays, separated out the players and so on into different layers and reprojected them and added annotation to dissect the plays and show you how the ball goes from a quick tap through to actually landing in the goal. And you could watch a video of this play many, many times and still not be able to see exactly how the ball ends up in the goal. I like to think of this kind of use of Mental Canvas as personalizing a photograph. So you could take a photograph and pull out different kinds of information and tell a story in a way that's very difficult to do in any other software. Here, if you look carefully, you can see actually that the background has not been projected at all. It's still completely flat. All of the action and projection has been done in the foreground. Okay, here's an example of a cafe that was designed and developed in Mental Canvas. And this is actually using our custom web player. So instead of just watching a video or seeing stills of the scene, here the user is freely navigating in the scene. And this is really helpful from a design standpoint with working with customers and collaborators, because instead of just looking at stills and trying to imagine what something is like, just at the drawing stage, you're actually able to immerse yourself in the drawing and get a really good feel for what the space will be like. And here's a very recognizable scene. This is the Acropolis, of course, in Athens, drawn by Carol Shung. Here you can see that it's a pretty loose sketch, and it gives you a sense of how Mental Canvas works. As I mentioned at the beginning, the scenes are comprised of transparent canvases with drawings on them, and those strokes on those drawings can be manipulated spatially. So here you can see by the juxtaposition of these canvases with strokes, we get this sense of being at the Acropolis, immersed in the site, but it's actually still a drawing, and it's still pretty loose. So this gives you an idea of what's possible. Here, this is also a nice example because we're actually looking at, we started with an overhead site view, and now we're immersed in perspectives, a variety of different places along the way. This is again being shown to you via our web player, so that's how we're able to interactively explore this drawing. I should also mention that in the software, I showed the ability to make a bookmark path, which can be saved and output to video, and we could play that pre-programmed path as well as interactively exploring. And along that path, you can stop and look around, but you can also play it through, of course, for a more refined sequence. So in the same way that the word processor has revolutionized text processing, Mental Canvas is going to elevate the way we draw and fundamentally change our conception of what a drawing can be. Thank you. I look forward to discussing Mental Canvas with you during the Q&A.
Hi, and welcome to the second day of NXTBLD virtual. Yesterday was the first time we did it, and this time hopefully this bit will go a little bit more smoothly. I'd like to thank massively Nate, Hilmar, Johann, Ernesto, and Julie for putting their presentations together and putting up with me badgering them. I think yesterday was pretty much a mind-expanding series of talks about what could be more about the future, more technologies that aren't really used too much. Today, we're looking at some technologies that are available and people who have been in the industry to essentially help us with new ways of exploring design. People who've been with NXTBLD since we started it, which I can't remember how long ago, will be very familiar with Hilmar and Johann and Archeo. The first time we saw it, it was a bedroom idea. The second time we saw it, it was getting some legs and had a programming team. And the third time you're going to see it, there's customers, there's beta programs, there's a fully fledged product, which is great. We've also got Nate Miller, who's top bloke. I met him at Case, and now he's Proving Grounds founder. And he's been a great person for me and AEC Magazine to throw difficult questions at for broad opinions. I'd really like to welcome Julie as well, who I haven't actually met, but I've seen her software now. I think it was the beginning of the year, and it blew me away. It was just like, this is just surreal. I think it's the best thing in sliced bread. So who'd have thought that 2D drawings would be so fantastic? So thanks to Nate, Hilmar, Johann, Ernesto, and Julie for joining me today. So I want to kick it off with, I thought, a simple question for Nate, which was, BIM as a concept, has it overpromised and underdelivered?
Overpromised and underdelivered, or over?
Yeah.
What was the question? I didn't quite catch the last word there.
So has BIM as a concept, was it overpromised initially, or has it underdelivered?
Well, I think there's a lot of facets to that question. And I would say, I mentioned it in my talk, that we're kind of in this space of wicked problems. And there are aspects of technology where there's the technology and the tools themselves. There are the people that use the technology, and then there are processes associated with how to best position the technology. And I would say that if we take it as a whole, I would probably say it's underdelivered on the promise. I don't know that I would assign specific blame to any one party about that side of things. And I think there's a common, we can refer to Gartner's hype cycle, right? Where BIM was at that peak of inflated expectations for a while, and we're starting to see elements of productivity arise out of building information modeling. But I would say that those plateaus of productivity have not, by any stretch of the imagination, hit where we thought it would go. And I think there are a number of reasons for that. I think as an industry, we perhaps underestimate how risk adverse and slow to change we are. I highlighted that Revit's been around for 18 years, and processes take a long time to really stick as a thing. And I also think that there's aspects of this where, you highlighted the Autodesk letter in our pre-chat here. There's aspects of this where the technology itself, I think, could improve at a more rapid pace, especially the core platforms, the flagship platforms that we're all very familiar with. But then there's also an aspect of this that does fall on practices to really think about how they can manage digital transformation in a way that is going to help them take advantage of these technologies. And not only just BIM, but VR, AR, machine learning, generative workflows, and so on. It does take a lot of rethinking of your workflows and your processes to really take advantage of them as a business model.
It does seem that the industry has rushed to embrace digital workflows, but then it doesn't really know what to do with the data it creates. So it's we're kind of information rich, but process poor.
There is that, and I would say that when it comes to the adoption of technology, and the thing that always strikes me about BIM-based processes in particular are the outputs. I think the inputs are different. The inputs are such that architects are dealing with three-dimensional geometry in ways that they haven't had to deal with before the introduction of BIM. They're having to deal with data sets and property management and those types of things. Yet the outputs are, I would say in many ways largely unchanged. It's still not quite commonplace to see model deliverables used in ways that have significantly replaced, I think, two-dimensional documents and drawings. The modes of procuring architecture have been, in many ways, remained unchanged. We still need CAD drawings to get approvals from various ordinances and approval chains. And I've among myself and my colleagues, and my fellows at Proving Ground, we've often asked this kind of idea of what is the Revit killer, or what is the BIM killer? What's the next gen platform? And we always keep coming back to, well, is it really going to be a technology, or is it going to be a fundamental change to how you procure architecture? And I think that's kind of where we landed. Like, the procurement model needs to transform in parallel with what the technological capabilities that we have at our disposal are.
When I was talking to Ian Godwin this week, talking about the issues of how slowly the industry moves, he said it took the industry forever to get from 2D to 3D. And now that 3D is kind of widely adopted and BIM is widely adopted, the move to something else, or the move to whatever the next generation is going to be easier, because the really difficult one of just getting off traditional 2D drawings, or even though the output is traditional 2D drawings, has been broken. That problem, that trouble has been bitten. They've already done it.
Yeah. I mean, it is. I mean, it's one of the oddest things I see, and when we operate in a consulting capacity, when we're kind of live as a sub-consultant on a project, helping folks with workflows and geometry considerations and developments, it's very strange to see teams having to juggle and straddle two worlds simultaneously. This idea that we're producing these very information-rich digital assets on the one hand, to produce these kind of these documents and outputs that are where our liability is attached. And I think it creates a lot of double work even on the same team. It also creates this mode where information isn't as transmitted as efficiently, and it also creates, I think, massive amounts of confusion among teams in terms of where their effort should be placed. And I think that's the big hurdle I see needing to be overcome in a lot of this space of digital architecture and tools.
We're talking about inputs and outputs. Let's move to Hilmar and Johann. So congratulations. I don't know if that was the first VR interview I've ever witnessed, and Ernesto kindly joined you for it. I think that was a very interesting way. So I've got a few questions that I'll ask you from people who've put in. So Roman Goshkov of Kettle says, what design tools are you using to build Archeo? Is it Unity?
I think I can answer that. So we built our own volumetric kernel, and that does most of the magic. So when you're putting objects close to each other, they're snapping into place, and they have that kind of gravity and that kind of how Archeo works. That's something that's we built ourselves, and we use Unity as the rendering platform and the device platform.
Okay, that makes it clear. The one thing that when you have collaborative workers working in a space, you're saying that you can work together at the same time. Do you have some kind of, if you were to grab a face and Hilmar were to grab the same face, what would happen?
It would, the person who comes first is going to be the first person locking that geometry. And it kind of works like a BIM. It's more like a real-time locking that gets sent over.
So Kevin Krieger's asked, the demos shown for VR design packages tend to focus on mass modeling. I'm curious to know if any specific data around comparing using VR tools versus standard desktop modeling tools to link to, say, screen shares are the VR tools actually faster, easier than these? So desktop versus immersive.
I think this asks for a little battle because we support both the desktop and the VR, and I think it's easier because when you think of it, we invented all these little widgets and things on our 2D screens to move and rotate things. Well, when it's something you can just do with your hands, it's just as easy as picking up and doing the rotation and the movement, and you can do it all in one movement. So it's much like in terms of tool wise, it's a lot faster than having to do that on a 2D screen.
And you got some people who don't want to wear the VR stuff, and they feel more comfortable with the iPad stuff.
Yeah.
So another question, Jonathan Irwan from Hassel is saying, what audio video conferencing interaction tools are available in Arkio, i.e. for design reviews, conversations with and without a VR, AR kit? So it's the iPad, I guess.
You want to answer that one, Hilmar, or?
So basically in Arkio, there's a lot of different things that you can do. You can sketch, you can basically create these volumes. It so happens that you can do that both in VR and on the iPad. You can actually do that even on your phone. And we basically put a lot of work into making Arkio available on these different platforms because we realized that not everybody wants to use essentially the VR headset. Not everybody has a VR headset. So just be able to even like pick up your phone and like join a design session is mind-blowing by itself, and you see these little heads floating around in a shared space, and that means everybody can kind of join and take part in the discussion and understand kind of design options and so on.
So Tom Riley of NVIDIA, hi Tom, has asked, the value proposition of VR and AR for collaborative design is invaluable, but what would it take to get clients to embrace it for design approval?
I think I can answer that if you don't mind. Yeah, so you know, at Count Design, we have been you know, embracing Arkio and VR as a whole to communicate ideas, design ideas, and intent. I think that we can say that Arkio, you know, has been very successful because it's a true cross-platform app. So you don't really have to think about, you know, deployment. That's one of the things that has been, you know, I guess been a blog in how fast we can get clients to embrace VR or immersive technologies as a whole, the hardware aspect of things, limitations on that. So I think that we are definitely moving forward at a good pace to have clients accept these tools as decision-making tools.
I've just got a question from myself, which is, so when you go to a client and you're showing them Arkio, so Arkio isn't photorealistic. It's kind of, it has its own look and feel. It obviously has supports textures, but there's this kind of nice lighting and the flat shading is kind of cool. But in a world where photorealism seems to be highly prized, do your customers mind, or do they really get with the kind of games feel of Arkio's quality of rendering?
Is that a question for me?
Oh yeah, sorry, Ernesto. Sorry, yeah.
Okay, sorry. Yeah, no, I think that Arkio plays just right into, you know, conceptually master planning, especially. You know, we are used to using tools like SketchUp, for instance. So clients are very familiar with the look and feel. And I think that the most important thing, other than just, you know, having, you know, amazing graphics, is functionality, having access to interactive tools that work and that can actually provide some type of, you know, way to negotiate and find solutions to design problems. I think that's more important than graphics when it comes to collaborative design. So yeah, you know, the clients have in mind, you know, the look. I think that they actually enjoy it. If you have seen some of the videos that Arkio has provided, the user interface and, you know, the widgets that come with, they are amazingly designed. So it's a fun app to use for sure.
I'd like to go to Julie now, and I've got some questions for her. So Kevin Quigley's asking, I love the concept. On your website, it says it works with touch-enabled devices like the iPad, Surface, and Cintiq Touch. Would it also work with tablets and non-Cintiqs?
Yes, it would work with any Windows-based tablet, any tablet that runs Windows, yeah.
How did you come up with the concept? I mean, was it something that you, like a beetle, that you woke up in the morning and thought, I've got a fantastic idea, I'm just going to go and write this song? Or how would you come up with this?
So it's a kind of a gradual process. I have a lifelong interest and fascination with drawing as a medium. I'm a university professor. My office happens to be right next to one of Eero Saarinen's masterpieces. Many of you probably know it. It's the Yale Hockey Arena, aka the Whale. And so I work in 3D graphics, and it's occurred to me over a long period of time that it would be very hard to envision structures like that, highly curvilinear structures, not just represent them. We could do that with a CAD system, of course, or scanning. There are all sorts of different ways to acquire and represent shapes like this. But how could I actually conceive of shapes like that? And I think that, architects, if you look at an architect's sketchbook, you see a variety of different kinds of sketches, some highly related to each other, some not. They're at different scales, they're messy. And the idea behind Mental Canvas was to be able to bring together multiple sketches at once in space, and to be able to develop coherence gradually. To be able to work with such complex forms, but in a way that would be amenable to conceptual design. So that was the original concept for Mental Canvas, but then it's kind of gone, sort of far beyond that in terms of what you can do, but that was the inspiration.
So the thing because I first saw the website, I saw the amazing interactions with 3D drawing. I couldn't in my head work out how you did it, and then your presentations gave away the secrets of the way that you do it, and that you've made something which the output looks very complicated, but the actual way you've done it makes it very simple to use. Anybody could do that. All you have to do is have an idea of perspective or which things would be seen with the concept of depth, which I think most people have. So I'm absolutely blown away. I think it's brilliant. And everyone's who's commenting and saying, Mental Canvas is an amazing tool. This is Roman Gorshoff from Kettle Collective. I remember it was available only through Microsoft Store. Are there any plans for a Mac version?
Right now it's Windows and iPad, but eventually I think we will have a Mac version, although the software really is very amenable to a touch screen. That's a kind of key part of the interface is pen and touch. So, it's not likely that Apple's going to move in the direction of a touch screen Mac, but as iPads get more powerful and more like the Mac, I think, we'll see what happens, but we're certainly aware of that there are a lot of Mac users who would like to be able to take advantage of this.
Is there a limit to the size of the scene you can create?
There is, in the same way that, there is with a CAD model. You can keep going to the point where you exceed the memory capacity of your machine, but we haven't gotten there yet. So we have some very, very complicated scenes. We also have, as a kind of product that we're developing in-house, a sort of publisher, if you will. You might think of it as like Adobe Premiere is to video what Publisher is to Mental Canvas scenes. So we're able to assemble together multiple scenes, swap things in and out, for sort of final consumption at the other end, like by the masses, like whether it's a commercial or an ad or a presentation. But we've actually put a lot of effort into keeping the representations compact. And particularly on iPad, we have to be very mindful of the memory because there's very limited memory available there.
So I've got Simon Odell from Landscape Futures has asked, I note that it's for professional use only, that's fine, but what are the criteria and acceptance for acceptance and pricing structure?
So I don't know if we could talk about pricing. Maybe we could email offline about that, but
Okay.
excuse me? I didn't know, sorry, how much you want to discuss that in here in this session, but certainly I think we've engaged with lots of different kinds of users, including, freelancers and so on. So we'd be happy to talk with you. The criteria is really just if you're passionate about using the technology and have an interesting application, we'd love to work with you.
So I remember talking to Rod, your business partner, earlier this year, and we were talking about, was it this year or last year? God, 2020, who knows? And he was saying that there was actually applications for this in everything, not just architecture, not just landscape, but also in MCAD manufacturing. But there are some kind of, the geometry there can be quite curvy. You can have a lot of blended fillets and stuff. And so he said that you had some sort of special ideas to try and bring Mental Canvas to that market. Is that still something you're looking at?
Yeah. So as is probably obvious from the presentation, our goal isn't to go, sketch to shape, but rather to push what you can do with drawing. So yes, we do have some ideas about representing sort of very curvilinear geometry, but using a stroke-based representation. That's something that we're kind of working on in terms of R&D.
Right. Okay. I'm going to go back to Nate. I'll find an easier question for you this time than what's happening.
I'm busy navigating around the Acropolis in Mental Canvas right now. It's awesome.
It is awesome, isn't it? God, it's disappeared. Someone asked about Power BI. Greg seems to have deleted it. Here it is. So Christopher Alexander asked, how do you get the floor plans to be interactive in Power BI?
Yeah, so there's a couple of components that go into it. We've built up a technology toolkit called Tracer that harvests information out of Revit into a database file format. We've built up a relational structure in SQLite, which can be used to connect right into Power BI and be used as a data source. And for those unfamiliar with the technology, Power BI is a Microsoft tool, and the BI stands for business intelligence. So it kind of falls in the same category of tools as like Tableau and other dashboarding and reporting environments where you can connect in multiple data sources. So it's popular among architects right now, and I think builders, just because of a lot of familiarity with Microsoft products. It's integrated with their 365 suite and so on. And so by allowing us to kind of attach into, and we've built up this toolkit for attaching Power BI into this harvested data from Revit, we also have a visual. It's a custom visual, much like you would drag a chart widget or a pie chart or bar chart or a table widget to view data. We said, well, shouldn't we have widgets that would also allow you to dynamically render your geometric information as well in a similar way that you would render a chart? And so our data source that we've designed includes object location data in 2 dimensions. It's not meant to be a 3-dimensional tool, but if you wanted to get a quick plan diagram of all of your room boundaries that are coming out of a Revit file, the data source allows that information to be rendered on the fly in the Power BI environment, and then have that information also attach into all the other widgets. So if I click on a space, I should be able to see the charts related to bar graph areas, cost, and so on, update along with it, and other tabular information. So it becomes interactive way to build up a dashboard.
So one thing I was thinking about, you mentioned open workflows, and open workflows with the whole Autodesk Ledger thing and talking to these guys, there's a whole movement towards wanting openness because this industry is kind of struggling to move forward. And but the problem is, open workflow seems to be a bit of a utopia. I was talking to somebody today online, and I said, you know, everyone says that they can do openness and they're open, but some firms have ponies wearing party hats as their unicorn, while others have Alsatians wearing traffic cones, and they all say that yes, we're open, we can carry on. But the reality is that nobody's truly open. And we've got IFCs. You take these files, you slice them into bits, and then you send them out. Will we ever have this open workflow that the industry needs?
You know, I don't know. I mean, I feel like we're always going to have a bit of a hybrid situation. I mean, when it comes to, there's obviously going to be technology that people are always going to really want to protect, and you know, that in effect can create data silos. But it also, in the kind of economy that we live in, creates some level of competitive advantage and the ability to both use revenue that goes, if people like your tool that you've put out there, people buy it, and you know, it goes back theoretically back into improving the tool over time and investing in other areas. And then you have open source movements, which is all about like community kind of engagement and building up new platforms. And there are models there, in some cases, very hard to monetize and build a business model around. So you see a lot of open source projects kind of fall on their face because either there's too many cooks in the kitchen or there's not enough development momentum to go behind it. So it really is, I think there's a matter of striking a balance. And I often like to highlight how the web developed. And if we think back to the early days of the web, you had a lot of walled gardens. You had AOL, you had other networks that you could attach to. And then you had the browser wars, which pointed to like, hey, this website's best viewable in Internet Explorer, whereas this one's best viewable in Netscape. And so there were all of these walled gardens. And there was a push among the web development community and internet users to say like, you know, we need our browsers built on open standards. So when we go to a website, it can be viewable on any device. We can, you know, get the same experience. We're not having to support all of these different things. And it placed, you know, it's still not quite there yet. I mean, we still see variances in how browsers support different things, but it certainly is a lot better. And it allows, you know, people that are authoring browsers to put emphasis on different kinds of user experience when it comes to navigating the web, as opposed to trying to build out their own proprietary HTML code or variant on JavaScript or things like that. I mean, personally, I would like to see like a vision of AEC technology where, you know, if there is a level of agreement on some form of open standard that authoring software can then build on top of, you know, I think that's very compelling as an idea. But we also recognize that the industry itself is made up of such a wide variety of interests, stakeholders, trades, and so on, that itself is a very onerous challenge. And so, you know, a lot of our work happens to be more about like taking the ecosystem as it exists and finding ways where we can surf through that ecosystem and connect things together in a way that can hopefully make lives easier for other people.
But every open standards seems to be a lowest common denominator. And once you start from a lowest common denominator, it's like, well, you've compromised to start with. I don't really know how that gets fixed.
There's a very funny meme about standards, and it starts off with a problem. The problem is we have 5 competing standards. Okay, well, I'm going to create a standard that's going to resolve all of this, all of these competing standards. And then new problem, we have 6 competing standards. And it's common everywhere. And it's really like there's an aspect of this which is far more cultural and consensus building focused than what our technology is capable of. I think we're very much capable of having open workflows given what we have, and what technology allows us to do. Are we ready to do that as a group?
Good question. Now we're being judged on our backgrounds. I need to tell you this. So James Thomas has said the winner of the best artwork on the walls is Hilmar, and the best on-brand backdrop is Nathan. And I'm getting asked if I'm in the broom cupboard. So, so yeah, thanks, James Thomas, for your comments. So I wanted to ask Ernesto a question. So architects are very precious with their data. They like showing it to their clients in a controlled way. They don't like necessarily sharing it too much with other people in case they get sued on it further down the line. But do you actually leave your Archeo models with your clients to play with, or can they only access it when you're there to nurture them?
Yeah, so right now we have been hosting all these experiences in-house. We haven't really tried to, provide the client with an artifact that they can play after. That's something that we have been definitely pushing for. There is a lot of issues when it comes to IT, dealing with the other side of, the client side of things, that sometimes they are not really comfortable using some of these tools. So it's just a matter of time, for them to catch up with, how virtual type of presentation tools can work for them. But yeah, definitely, we are definitely pushing towards that as the goal. And just to follow up on the conversation of, file formats and, how we interact with workflows.
Yeah.
I don't know if you guys have follow up with USD file format that is coming out, from different industries. 3ds Max is taking on that, and I know NVIDIA is working hard on Omniverse to try to solve some of these problems. I definitely think that this is, open source and, open file format is something that we will see, being embraced in our industry more, within the next year or so. And, we are definitely, Count Design as a firm, we're definitely embracing this type of new workflows to try to empower our designers. We have people working with Revit, Rhino, SketchUp, 3ds Max, you name it. We are very open to the fact that, some artists, they want to use our tool and we want them to focus on their craft. So I think that this conversation is very important, and we see that push happening.
See, what I'm finding is all file formats, all open file formats, all interoperability formats, they're like sausage machines. They just cut your data up into little sausage slices, and they destroy it to send it to someone else where they try and get the bits they need out. USD is owned by Pixar, and trying to get Pixar to add things that are important to the building industry is very hard, allegedly, because Pixar are more interested in USD for their interactions with the sort of rendering side of things. So IFC will win out in one instance because it's got more of the eye of BIM, more information, but USD will have the lighting, the geometry, all the good stuff. And the question is, does someone create an extension to USD to include all the good stuff? At which point it needs to become an open format, or that little extension needs to be worked on by everybody, so that we have one format to rule them all. But I'm very excited by Omniverse, and I think we've got Andrew Rink talking about it next week from NVIDIA. So, and I know Autodesk have bought completely into it, and we're going to see a lot of action in that area. I just hope that you don't end up having to cut up your models with all these different file formats, and eventually files will disappear, and hopefully it'll be APIs that we're complaining about. Let me just check if. So I've got another question for Hilmar and Johann. To the teams focusing on 3D and VR solutions, where is 2D preferable to use, or more specifically 3D or VR not appropriate? I know Ernesto could also answer this as well. When do you use 2D? When do you use 3D? And when do you use VR?
Yeah, I think there's often like strengths for all of these, but come to think of it, the actual way we communicate best is using 3D objects. So I think if we can, we prefer to work with small scale models to explain an idea, or even something simple like a floor plan. You can explain it better having a 3D model of that floor plan. but the time to craft a model like that might be a bit longer than just making a rough sketch on a piece of paper that you have available. But thinking a bit in the future, where we're going with portable headsets like this Oculus Quest that has hand tracking, and this will just keep improving in the next few years. These headsets will get very available. We will have this tool that we have everywhere, our hands, with like a augmented reality app. That if it gets that easy to make a sketch in 3D as it would be to make it on a piece of paper, I think people would prefer to do it in 3D.
Yeah, it's like horses for courses, I guess, in that way. Just checking. What's the biggest model you can load into Archeo in terms of poly count, or is it Revit file size? What's your limit?
And Nestor actually pushed the limit in that one. So, do you still remember how big that model was, Nestor?
Man, I don't remember. We have the whole city of Philadelphia loaded into Archeo for one of the project pursuits this year. So
Wow.
yeah, a lot of geometry is very forgiving when it comes to that, which is very exciting. And not only with PC, but also, you know, with mobile devices. We were using an iPad to present virtually. We had an architect actually sketching on the iPad in the Archeo model, what somebody was in the VR space, kind of navigating things. So it's very impressive, yeah. Johann, I don't know if you want to expand on that.
What's the maximum number of people you've had working in one space?
So I had a session with Cornell University last week where we joined with 16 people, like 16 students were all like virtually presenting like the ideas they had to all the classmates that joined in. And it became a bit chaotic because like everyone's just modeling and doing things and sketching and stuff. But I think if you limit the amount of people that would like do the actual modeling to like about 5 people, you can keep the overview and then just have the other people come in as spectators viewing the models.
I think you need to speak to Julie, because I've just got so all this geometry which kind of kills everything. If you could turn most of the model of Philadelphia into Julie's 2D representations, and you could model on the building that you're working in, then you've got a beautiful hand sketched model with the geometry. I think there you go. It's a great idea. It's free.
To combine everything.
Thank you.
So loads of people are just saying, Julie, mental canvas is awesome, stunning. Willie Watt from Nickel Russell Studios says, Julie, it's stunning tool. It's like drawing by creating stage flats. I don't know what that is, but that's one. Simon Adele wants to know, you said it run on Windows. Will it run on Microsoft Surface Go 2?
Yeah, it will.
Okay. James Thomas, does working in the planes that your solution leverages take any specialist training or skills? How quick are people picking it up? What kind of learning curve?
I think it's actually very straightforward to learn. So because you're drawing on a plane, people are used to that. They're used to drawing on paper or on a digital canvas. So that part is very straightforward. And we have some novel operations to reproject strokes spatially, but it's really, the system is designed to build on the process of drawing. There's very little direct 3D manipulation in the system. It's all kind of leveraging a drawing process and reuse of stroke, manipulations of stroke, and animation of views.
Have you thought about, okay, say you have a Revit model, and so you've gone past the concept design, you're in the actual Revit model, and you kind of want to do an extraction that you could possibly turn some of the lines into sketch lines, so you could bring that in as part of your assemblage for when you're sort of creating scenes?
Yeah, so incorporating 3D models is a natural extension. In our case, I think, as you just aptly pointed out, Martin, you probably wouldn't want to load in like the whole city of Philadelphia or a full CAD model. I think in this case, we'd like to be consistent with the lightweight kind of representations that we have in the system. So models could easily be represented in a way that would be very amenable to sketching relative to them, which I think would be a really nice way to mark things up or make manipulations with respect to an existing model or an existing environment.
It just is, in the demonstrations you've given, it is 360 degrees, but you define the range almost of how much 3D you're giving your view by how much you want to draw.
Right. And I mean, another way to think about it is it's really about creating a set of views that taken together give you an immersive experience. It's not about, in the limit, of course, you could draw out a full 3D world, but I think the key sort of take home is that you don't need to do that. And so you can make a lot of decisions and develop ideas quickly without the need for a full 3D model.
Kevin Quigley's asked mental canvas question. Will this be available as a standalone application or as a subscription service with web viewer? And when? Because I want it right now.
So please write to us if you'd like it right away. We can happy to accommodate. But it will be available with the authoring suite and an add-on for the web player. They obviously go hand in hand.
And so you say it runs on an iPad and it runs on Microsoft Surface.
Or any Windows 10 machine with pen and touch. So, HP, Lenovo, all make devices. Dell make devices that would support mental canvas.
Surely not. It can only be Lenovo. I can't say that. So I've got Nate, Tom Riley from NVIDIA says, what would it take for regulatory agencies to accept 3D models for the approval processes versus traditional 2D plans? Oh God, yeah, in the UK, most of our planning people haven't a clue when you give them a 3D model.
Well, it's a massive skills gap ultimately, and I think there's also a level of like figuring out how information is given to a certain stakeholder. You often want to go towards formats and modes of representation that can be accessed by anyone and readily understood in a place that doesn't require like specialized technology, viewers, or anything like that. 2D documents are sticky. And I think they're sticky for a number of reasons. They're sticky because you can print them out and that there are standards that, assigned to how they should look and feel and be presented to a group. And, when it comes into an approval chains like email address, I got a PDF, I can open it up, I can look at it and be like, oh yeah, that looks good. It's and in a lot of cases, there's also this aspect of the approval process is often so driven by the idiosyncrasies of the individual that's reviewing it. And one of my favorite stories, and I'm hearing this story from the context of someone who loves data and evidence and these kind of feedback loops that exist. My wife's an architect, and she was on a project where there was a material review of sorts that she needed to get approved by the city. And it met all of, like, from a data standpoint, this material met all the criteria by code. But when it came to an actual approval process, she had to take the physical material to the city. Someone took it into a egress stairwell and lit it on fire to see if it put off enough smoke. And it was so low tech when it came to how a specific piece of material got approved that, it sort of brings things back to reality. They can talk about code officials when they go to the site. Are they having a bad day or aren't they? And, might be a determining factor if you need to do some revision. There's all sorts of stuff that isn't data driven or evidence based in terms of how these decisions get made. And I think a lot of it comes back to, when it comes to the 2D documents, there's these modes of representation that folks have come to accept. And, and I think a lot of this goes into the VR conversation as well, in terms of how do you make a technology like that so sticky, in the sense that, hey, I need this, and I'm going to work this way into the approval process. And going back to my wife, she works for a developer, and she does a lot of community board meetings and neighborhood reviews with folks, and they have to bring stuff to these meetings on boards and paper because they may not have a projector, they may not have the technology available there, and so there's sort of a reduction of information that needs to occur that can be presentable to a wide variety of folks that have different ways of interpreting it. And it needs to be presented in a way that is very, in some ways, definitive, where you're not allowing them to navigate to the back of the building, but you're kind of showing them what you want to show them in a very storyboarded fashion. And so there's a lot of nuance there, I think, when it comes to how do you start to layer in new technologies and new modes of representation into, quite frankly, groups that don't necessarily have the skills, the technology, or the tools to understand them in a readily available way.
Ernesto, do you think that you could use Archeo for planning permission and regulatory approval? Not that they're going to set it on fire, I hope, but.
I wish. Yeah, I think that, that early master planning side of things, we definitely can use that to communicate with the client and everything. But yeah, I can see, having this new plugin where you can actually 3D model in Archeo and send it back to Revit. I mean, that's a step forward to having a two-way communication between, the documenting side of things and also the creative side where you collaborate with the client.
It's interesting. There's cultural differences in different countries to planning and what you do for planning. So I went to an HP launch for their really large format 3D printer, and it could only print, the only material they'd created for it was black. And I just said to them, it's a real shame you just didn't have white instead of black, because most architects love to 3D print in white. They like modeling in white. And next to me was an American architectural writer. He just said, no, they don't. And we had this huge argument that people in America wanted to 3D print in photorealistic colors, while people in Europe wanted to 3D print in white. And a lot of it's behind that they don't really want to give the planning people an actual model with the approximate real texture maps on it, in case they won't approve it because of the colors and what it looks like. Well, in America, that seems to be less of an issue, that you want to show them something that looks maybe a little gaudy, but something similar to what it should be. And then on the UK, it's kind of like, oh my God, hide it. Make sure they don't actually see what it actually is going to look like, which seems to work. Anyway, that's the way these things go. But I've got some more for Hilmar and Johann. Do you need a tethered headset for Archeo, maybe for larger data sets? Or are standalone headsets like the Oculus Quest fine for all workflows?
So we've been putting a lot of work into making Archeo available on these mobile headsets, and that's been kind of the requirement from day one. So the answer is Archeo runs on the Quest. It's going to run beautifully on the Quest 2 that's just coming out. And the difference really is kind of the amount of polygons you really can kind of render in the device.
Okay. And are there any plans to extend the reach of Archeo further down the design process for design review, issue resolution, complete with tracking to feed back into our lovely BIM systems?
So when we started Archeo, the focus really was on kind of the early kind of conceptual phase, the early conceptual design. Now that we have this kind of bidirectional link with Revit, we can actually go much further into the design process. So at any point in time in the design process, you can actually jump back into ArcGIS, do a quick design review, sketch new ideas, make sure everybody kind of understands them in the same way, and then like seamlessly export everything back into Revit to continue the work. In terms of kind of going in further down the road, like class detection and so on, we don't have any kind of concrete plans on that at the moment. We feel that the opportunity to kind of do kind of make sure everybody is kind of on the same page, kind of in the kind of first half of the design process is huge. So we're kind of focusing on that essentially.
So underneath ArcGIS, are you actually pulling the geometry through using the Unity link to the Unity link to Revit, or have you got a different way of bringing an RVT?
So it's basically our own. We've written our own Revit plugin to take geometry from Revit into ArcGIS. And then the real magic happens when you kind of start to sketch on top of the Revit model inside ArcGIS, and you export back to Revit. We actually create native Revit geometry inside Revit. So it's not like you're exporting the ArcGIS model as a mess to Revit. Yeah. We actually create native Revit geometry like mass or like generic models that you can work on top of inside Revit.
That's cool. So there's obviously a lot of stuff in Unity now because of that link. You just don't need to use it, or it's just you already figured that out before?
So we kind of done it. We're looking at what kind of reflected us and all the other technologies out there. We really want to kind of maintain our link from ArcGIS into Revit. That's something that's very unique to ArcGIS, kind of creating this native kind of geometry using the Revit API itself. But in terms of bringing geometry into ArcGIS, we're looking at, we both have our own solution and we're looking at other things because ultimately we want to be able to consume as much geometry as possible into ArcGIS in the easiest way possible.
Okay. And Julie, I'm just wondering, what kind of improvements are you working on to come out next, if you can tell us anything?
Sure. So one I mentioned earlier about the ability to depict curvilinear surfaces, and we also are advancing our imaging tools for more sophisticated operations that will work in conjunction with our sketching tools. And then we're also working a lot on the publisher end of things, the web player and various types of things that can be supported in that.
So you have many companies testing out and playing with it at the moment. And are they nearly all architectural, or do you have mechanical product design as well?
They span a pretty wide range of applications. Certainly architecture is probably the biggest, but we also have people doing product design, visual storytelling for news, concept development for movies and storyboarding. And then some people just doing visual communication, diagramming of workflows and product development flows and so on.
Okay. So I think we're coming up to the hour at the moment, and I think we get kicked off. I'm not too sure how the system works, but we allowed an hour for this. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to draw it to a close. Just going to say thank you so much to everybody who joined us today. And thanks to Nate, Hilmar, Johann, Ernesto, and Julie for digging a little bit deeper into their presentations and the technologies that they're offering. Just want to say we're taking a break for the weekend. And on Monday, we're back with Digital Fabrication Day, where we've got some amazing insights into where architecture meets digital fabrication. So we've got Bruce Bell from Facet Homes, who's been digitally manufacturing residential properties for over 10 years now, using a milling machine on site from Revit. We've got Mark Taylor from Royal BAM, who's been doing some amazing things with 3D printed concrete. And we've got Alexander Turk from Additive, which is a new company I found only a few weeks ago. And they've got some very innovative shotcrete technology, which will enable the rapid building of rebar and concrete structures. And they even use robots to smooth out the surface after they've done it. So that's going to be some pretty interesting stuff never seen before. So I'd like to thank you all so much for your time, and we'll see you on Monday. Thank you.